Hi, I'm Atomicus from OWKings.com, and today I'll talk about Pharah on Oasis. Anything from team compositions to different engagement angles and whatnot. As of yet, Pharah works against certain compositions, primarily ones that don't have that many hit scan heroes such as McCree, Widowmaker, and Soldier 76. Before we continue, make sure to check out the main guide for Pharah since I'll skip the basic stuff about her in this video. We're going to start off with the first point on Oasis, which is the city center. It's a pretty good map for Pharah with a lot of cover and space to use with her. Even if the enemy team has Soldier 76 or McCree, you can still deal with them by using the cover on the high ground. Initially, you want to get on the high ground near the jump pad as soon as possible. From here, you can cover the doorways that the enemy team will use to get to the jump pad and eventually on the high ground. You can also use your concussive blast to knock some people off the map as they try to get on the jump pad. If the enemy team decides to go straight to the point instead of the high ground, then you should have a big high ground advantage already during the team fight. Always focus on key targets such as support heroes or any hit scan heroes that might contest you. You should be able to surprise most of them using the space around the point. When you control the point, you can just use this high ground to spam any choke points that the enemy team might use. You can even hover up here to scan what the enemy is up to, or if you feel like you can kill someone that just respawned. Usually there are three paths that the enemy team can use to take the point. One is by going towards the jump pad and gain control of the high ground. The second one is by going through the main entrance and go straight on the point, which is the shortest route. And finally, the third is by taking the long route to the left near the cars. Each of these paths have their advantages and weaknesses, and depending on their composition, you can almost expect which one they will try to use. If they have hitscan heroes, they will usually want to get on the high ground using the jump pad. If your team composition is heavily benefiting from the high ground advantage, the enemy team will be forced to either go directly on the point or take the long path using the building on the point as cover while they're contesting the point. In this case, you can just fly on this building and deal damage to the enemy team from this position. So basically in the end, you need to pay attention to the enemy's composition and scout where they will push from and reposition yourself accordingly so you can spam the choke points they will use to approach the point. In terms of retaking the point, your team should also use one of those three paths accordingly to what composition the enemy team has. If the enemy team is holding on the high ground, you can try to push them off from here so that your team can engage them and pick them off once they fell on the point. If you manage to push everyone off from here, then you can just take the high ground for yourself and punish the enemy from here. Sometimes you will find only the hitscan heroes here without the rest of the team, so taking them out could be easy if you manage to surprise them. So ideally, you want to take the high ground together with your team before contesting the point, but if that's not possible, you can have the team push directly towards the point or take the long path using the building on the point as cover. This should force some of the enemy team that's holding on the high ground to drop down, leaving maybe just a few heroes on top. This can give you the window you need to try to pick them off. So basically, wait and see if some of them will drop off and then try contesting the high ground afterwards. If it doesn't work, then you can just go together with the team and just get on top of the building located on the point. From here, you can try to punish the enemy players that will drop to contest the point. Using your barrage on this side of the map is relatively straightforward. You have several choke points that you can fly above and ulti as the enemy team pushes in. You can also just fly above some of these buildings and flank from behind with your barrage as well. There's this familiar spot again that you can use to get behind the enemy team as they push in, or this route if you want to get behind an enemy team that's using the long path to get to the point. Of course, the best way to maximize your ulti usage in the end is to combo with a Zarya, Reinhardt, or Mei if they are available in your team. Moving on to the next point on this map, we've got the gardens, which is kinda similar to the previous one since there's a lot of space that Pharah can use around the point. There isn't much high ground that you can sit on except a platform that's located slightly above the point. Still, better than nothing. There's two ways to get to the point initially. One is through this main area. If the enemy team decides to also use this path, you will pretty much fight around this area as you go towards the point. The other way is by going left side, on the high ground, or directly on the point. In this case, being on the high ground is the priority here. You can either go together with the team or roll out from the left side and fly around this platform. Initially, you want to know beforehand what side your team will pick so you can fight together with them in the same area. Otherwise, you might bump into the enemy team alone and get picked off easily. It's also good to know that the team that's using a Lucio in their composition will be the team that will reach the high ground first. Keep in mind this as you're going into this map as Pharah, since it's pretty hard to take the high ground alone if they have any hitscan heroes already on the platform. So basically, try supporting your team in the respective areas, either in the main path or around the point. You can easily use your concussive blast here to push some enemies off the platform, hopefully killing them off. Pushing them towards the point is fine as well, since you'll deny the high ground to them in the end. Holding the point doesn't really change much. You pretty much hold on the platform and spam the choke points as the enemy team pushes in. From here, you can use several things to your advantage. One is the small medkit below the platform in case you need to gain some health really fast. Another is using this window to deal damage to the enemy team depending on where they're pushing from, and lastly, there's also this spot here that you can use to hide or navigate around the roofs here. I assume this is a bug and not intended for use since you won't recover any jet fuel when you're sitting on it, and because you can't sit on the other identical edge from the opposite side of this spot. Still, we don't know if they will fix this or leave it this way, so might as well take advantage of it while you can. For retaking the point, the best path to use is the one on the left, towards the platform. Most teams will usually just hold on the platform after they capture the point, so you can use your concussive blast to either push some of them off the map or push them off the point, which could help you take out some key targets that are sitting here. Since you're going to be disconnected from your team to some extent, you can use the mega health pack here if you're low on health. Ideally, you would want to fly towards this platform as your team pushes in so that the enemy team that's holding up here is distracted, which should give you the element of surprise. You can also approach the point from the main area, but this will work mostly when the enemy team doesn't have any hit-scan heroes to contest you. You won't really manage to get close to the point if they have hit-scan heroes holding on the platform, since they will benefit from the open space as you're approaching the point with no good cover to use as Pharah. Using your ulti here is similar to the previous map. Use the choke points to your advantage and barrage the enemy team as they push in towards the point. Plenty of doorways that you can cover with the barrage, and you can also use the window or the roofs to potentially get behind the enemy team and use your barrage on them. You can also try using your barrage offensively on the platform if you manage to sneak on any players that are holding here. Alright, so the last point for Oasis is the university. This part of the map is quite straightforward, and there aren't that many options available overall, but it's still a good map for Pharah due to the open space on the point and the possibility of pushing people off the map. There's two ways that the initial teamfight can go here. One is on the high ground and the other one is on the point. The best way to roll out here is to go on the high ground, but it all depends on what team has a Lucio in their composition. If they have a Lucio and you don't, then you are left with the low ground and you will have to force the enemy team to drop on the point somehow. If they have hit-scan heroes on the high ground, it will be much harder for you to fly around the point without taking care of them. We're going to talk about the ideal situation here, implying both teams have a Lucio in their composition and they're going for the high ground initially. In this scenario, you can use your concussive blast to push some people off, especially if they don't have a Reinhardt in their composition. If they do have one, then just wait for him to walk up the stairs and then you can try pushing the rest of the players that are coming behind him. If you manage to push even one person off, that's an easy pick that can help you win the initial team fight. If the first team fight is happening on the point, you should always take the high ground for yourself and deal damage from here. Even if they have some hit-scan heroes holding here alone, you should be able to take care of them easily either with your concussive blast by pushing them off the map or by surprising them and killing them. Once you have the point under your control, there are several spots that you can use for spamming the choke points that the enemy team will use for getting closer to the point. Ideally, you want your team to hold together with you on the high ground, but you can also split with some teammates near the point and others on the high ground. If the enemy team decides to push towards the high ground, you should have the advantage once again, since you can try pushing some of the players off the map. If they push straight towards the point, you can either deal damage through this gap or by just flying above the point. It's good to note that you can drop in the pit if you ever need to regain health, since there's a mega health pack in here. You can also try pushing some people in the pit with your concussive blast, especially any heroes that can't climb out easily, like Reinhardt. Retaking the point is similar to the initial team fights. If the enemy team is holding on the high ground, which should be expected all the time when they're holding the point, then you can try finding an angle that you can use to knock some people off the high ground as your team pushes in. Basically, while your team will try to force the enemy team to drop to the point and contest, you can flank from the left side and try to take some players out. If the enemy team is not even holding on the high ground for whatever reason, then you can also just fly above the point and fight from there. In terms of using your barrage on your own, nothing really changes. You've got the choke points towards the enemy spawn that you can use, and you can also hide aggressively here as the enemy team pushes by. You can easily come from behind and barrage any key targets from the backline. Don't forget to keep these med packs in mind for whenever you are too low on health. Overall, Oasis is a pretty good map for Pharah, with a lot of interesting flanking routes that you can use to her advantage, but remember that if you are heavily contested by any hit-scan heroes, and you feel like you can't help your team anymore, then you should change to another hero. Okay, this brings us to the end of another guide for Pharah, this time on Oasis. I hope you have learned a couple of new things for this map, and on that note, thank you for watching and I wish you a good one. Take care.